Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. Jeffrey Burke here. I am so glad you're here today. Every time we do a show and every time I do an interview and I have a conversation, there's always points that are going to come out that you're going to say, I've been wondering about that, or there it is. I've been waiting to hear that. The thing is, you never know when that missing piece of the puzzle, that last intricate little piece that lets you see the whole puzzle in one visual view is going to come to you, and you never know where it's going to come from. So on my show, I bring you people from a lot of different places, all over the industry, outside the industry, people you know, people you don't know, but every single one of them with a great message to share. Today, we're talking with Todd. I'm so happy. She is a registered dietitian with over 30 years experience, another one of our lifers here that we have on. And I think you're going to learn some really interesting things today, and sit back and enjoy. And once again, welcome to the show. Hey, Karen, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Jeffrey. So nice to be on the show.
I'm so glad to have you on here. I follow you. I know I see you a lot on LinkedIn, and there's people in the industry who sounds terrible. I'm kind of a silent stalker. I stalk people in the industry and I watch what they're doing because I love what they're doing. And then eventually I get the nerve to reach out and say, how would you like to be on my podcast? So thank you for accepting the invitation. And let's talk a little bit about the industry. We both have been in it a long time, and people ask me all the time, what is something that you think has changed the most in our industry? Is it the products? Is it the mentality? Is it a little bit of both?
I think the one thing that I've seen so much lately are the amount of products coming into the marketplace. So there's so many more players than ever before who may or may not have a background in nutrition or food science or whatever it is, but there's so many more players than ever before launching products faster than ever before.
I think I agree with that as well. I was actually down in Florida. I'm somewhere all the time. But I was in Florida last week, and I was in, where was I? I was at Earth Origins, and I was doing kind of a sit down, meet the people conversations. And I was in the food aisle, and I was talking to one of the ladies that was doing the order there. And she was in not the chip section, the chip aisle. And I just said, isn't it amazing that one time there was maybe 2 or 3 different kinds of natural chips? She goes, and now there's like 1,000. And I said, I know. And that's where I really started looking around. And I'm like, there's like 500 or 1,000 different kinds of natural soft drinks. Same thing where natural chewing gums and candy bars and protein bars. And it's almost overwhelming.
As supplements as well, you go into those aisles and it's just overwhelming. How do you break it down and make it easy?
I think something that I think that we're all kind of looking at today is, where do we start? I get that question all the time if I'm doing a consumer lecture or I'm doing a radio show with someone, and they'll say, can you give somebody maybe a couple steps in the direction of where to get started? Like, they haven't applied themselves, they haven't been really treating themselves very well, but they want to. So I'm going to ask you the same question. You're 40 years old, you've never paid attention, you've eaten a terrible diet, you're stressed out, burned out, fried out, and you just kind of want to head in the right direction. Where do you start?
First of all, I always tell people to look what goals do you have in mind and are they achievable? Usually around the New Year's, we have our annual goals, and they may or may not be achievable. We might take on more than we can chew or more than we can for that period of time. But look at the goals that you have in mind. And for that person, if they want to get up off the couch and maybe start walking as one lifestyle tip or one lifestyle, I always also say, like, what goals, but what can you do that's achievable? Don't necessarily take on too many at once. Maybe 1 or 2 small goals or small steps to get to that goal by the end of the year. So really look at the person, their age group, their physical activity, what they're into, and then they can really hone down on, like, is it energy that's really bothering me? Do I not get enough sleep? Do I eat right? Do I need just a basic multivitamin, multimineral?
It's funny because we're dealing with a lot of stuff today. We're in this huge comparison game where people try to compare themselves to people they see on TV or in the media, and we have this body type trying to identify with, things that are just not probably going to happen, and we have crazy off the chart goals that we set for ourselves that are not reachable, to your point. And I think our impatience level is terrible. And I think if we don't see something kind of quickly, it's very easy to just say, it can't work, it won't work, I can't do it. And I think we give up too early. And I think that's different than the mentality that was here 100 years ago. People back then knew that if they were going to make a change, they had to make it on their own. And if they were going to do something to have a better life, they had to work for it. And they strived and they pushed themselves. And I think they were more successful. Where today, I think we want more people to do it for us, and we don't really apply ourselves. That's just my thinking.
Quick and fast and permanent. Want it to work. Yeah.
It's real funny. I had a lady that called me a couple of years ago. We sat down and we did one of those January 2nd sit-down consultations. And I told her for years I would do it with her. So I helped her write a diet and got her supplements. And if she had followed it and just done it well, she would have lost about 5 to 7 to 8 pounds every month, which would have been great. And over the year, she would have lost all the weight she wanted to. It would have been slow and easy. So she gets to the end of the first month and she loses 5 pounds and she's devastated. She wanted 30 in her mind. And at the end of the second month, she lost another 5. So I'm thinking she's on course. She is having a meltdown. And I told her, I said, "What are you doing today?" She goes, "I'm going to the grocery store." I said, "Call me when you get there." So she got to the grocery store and I said, "Go to the baking aisle." And she goes, "The baking aisle?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Find the sugar." So she did. And I said, "I want you to pick up 2 5-pound bags of sugar and put one in this arm and this arm, and then just push your cart around the store. Call me later." Well, she called me about 10 minutes later and she says, "Oh my goodness, these sugars are so heavy." And she sat them in the cart and I said, "Yeah, but that's only 10 pounds. And she went, "All right, point taken." And we're number oriented. We want big numbers. We don't realize that we didn't get to where we are overnight, and our health didn't get terrible overnight, but we still have that dream to be able to fix everything with a magic wand. So she progressed through the year. She lost 65 pounds. And she did fantastic. She hasn't gained a thing back. She ran her first marathon last year at the end of the year. She's doing fantastic, but she would have been one that would have quit because of not getting the gratification she was looking for. So I'm glad she stuck with it.
Well, and those small changes over time, and then a support group for you to come in and keep her on track. That's great.
What is your favorite category of supplementation in the natural products industry? Do you have a favorite category?
I have 2. I have
Okay.
anti-aging, longevity. As I age, I want to age gracefully, and quality of life is very important to me. And brain health. Those 2 categories I think are very top of mind for me, but also my parents, also my nephews, my nieces that are going to college. We're all trying to really focus our attention, what we're spending our time doing. And then that quality of life, I think, is important for everyone as they age. Not necessarily you need to be in your 70s, 80s, or 90s to think about it.
And there's a lot of hindsight, coulda, shoulda, wouldas out there. And, and I don't think it's ever too late to start getting healthy, but obviously the earlier we start, the better results we're going to have. And I personally come from an Alzheimer's family, and my grandmother and her 7 brothers and sisters all had dementia and Alzheimer's. So it's very scary. So I've been on the mental health and cognitive health train for a really long time, and I supplement a lot accordingly. And I think that's what's kept me so active in my job and my career and my travels, is I kind of want to challenge myself. I don't want to sit down and just start, growing plants out of my ears and, vegetating. I don't want to do that. I want to be active. And so I do challenge myself a lot. And I think that's really important. I think after the pandemic, and you can let me know how you feel about this, I think a lot of people that were dealing with cognitive issues and or mental health issues like anxiety and depression and phobias and things like that, and things like OCD and ADD and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of those people that may have been suffering in silence after the pandemic, it seems like they're a little bit more open, a little bit more focused, and a little bit more visual. What do you think?
I do. I still hear about people having long-term issues, but I do think people are paying attention more and taking care of themselves a little bit better than before.
Yeah, and I think we have more tools at our fingertips today. And I think that, it's funny, you take a look at like the herb turmeric. And turmeric has been used and recommended for 900 years all through Asia. And people will say, "Well, have you heard of that new thing called turmeric?" And I'm like, "Really?" And it's been used for hundreds and hundreds of years, centuries. And but sometimes we're just learning about it. And medication does get put on the pedestal more than anything else, and they have their problems too. There's a lot of class action lawsuits, and they jump to the front of the line. Are they life-saving? They can be. Are they important? Yes, they are. Do we all have to use them? No, we don't. So I think to myself sometimes, where do we put our focus? I mean, how do you know where to put your focus? Because I have friends that will only do what a doctor tells them to do. And these are very intelligent, very well-schooled individuals. And then I have friends that, they're a little bit more loosey-goosey with things. They're going to be open to the door to supplements and fish oils and all that kind of stuff. They'll go to the doctor when they need to. How do you find the balance? I'm still struggling to teach the balance.
I think exposure, the person who only thinks of, I can only get advice from my doctor, is limiting themselves, and being exposed to other things, other people. I always talk about what I do take on a daily basis or what I recommend for my parents. What I found and what I don't want is them to come afterwards and show me what they're taking, or I find it in the cabinet, like, "Why are you taking this? Where did this come from?" And they're like, "Oh, that's for my heart." Like, well, what's wrong with your heart? So I think exposure is important, and giving them the right guidance on what to expose themselves to. It's always good to have a nice variety, but there's always going to be a different viewpoint. So having different viewpoints is important, and then being able to know where the credible information is coming from. And we've talked about misinformation quite a bit over this past year, and trying to quiet the noise, and how do consumers really understand even what to buy. Or my parents are out there shopping, and they wouldn't even know firsthand what to buy. They listen to something on the TV and then they buy it immediately, but when it comes, it's not necessarily what they were looking for.
And I really do think that the transparency part of our culture, I honestly do feel in my heart that it's getting better. But I think it's getting better because of the fact that the consumers are now asking for transparency.
Yes.
I don't think it's getting better because people said, we need to be more transparent. I think it's probably getting better because the consumers are like, well, what's really in your products, and where do you get your raw sources? I'm supposed to ask that. And, do you do third-party testing? And why would you not want to talk about those things if you're doing them? Because it gives you credibility. I think that we have some wonderful industry product companies that are available to us all through the industry. I think we have some bad players, and you'll never hear me say anything about anybody. It's not who I am, but I do think we do. And I think that as a consumer, the companies that are available, that should be available, are the ones that are doing everything correct. So when they choose, they're not going to really make a mistake. They may just find one that's a better fit. And I want to see more of that.
Glad you talked about transparency. I think that's one of my core pillars, from integrity, transparency. From as a person, I believe that's really important, that people can trust what they're taking, what they're doing, and who they're speaking with. So having as much information that should be available for them at their level of whatever they do need, I think is really important, and having a place to go. I've heard for a little while that folks were not directing people to the internet because or to Amazon because there was so many negative products out there. But there's a lot of really good products too. So looking beyond that, but looking to the ones that do bubble to the top and have that degree of transparency is, I think, really, really important and critical.
And to that point, and thank you, I agree 100%. I think that when someone finally makes the conscious decision to start getting healthy, the worst thing you want to do is for them to use a product that is never going to do anything good for them. And they're never, ever going to see a result, because that is going to turn them off from the industry completely, rather than just saying, well, that one didn't work, I'm going to try another one. It'll turn them off to everything. So my thing is if the credibility products and transparent products and high quality formulations are available and somebody can take something and see or feel a measured difference, even if it's just a little bit different, they're going to be much more motivated to stay in place and stay with the program. And I've seen that with people over the years. And today we have better dilutions, we have better extractions, we have better delivery systems, we have better quality, better blends. Because when I started, there were no blends. We didn't have any of this stuff. I mean, today it's like a candy store. You walk into a health food store, you can get so many wonderful things, and all the thinking is done. You just have to pick the one that you want to choose and see how it reacts with your system. But I think we're getting better in some aspects. Where I have a problem is with people that are, and don't get me wrong, I'm all over social media. I'm everywhere, and I admit it. I'm guilty, and I love it too. And whether I'm doing it or just watching it, so both sides. But the thing is, I think sometimes I hear things out there, and I'm like, why would you say that? And, how much education do you have on this? And people are already, you have 1 million followers, and how many people are going to think what you just said is true? And that kind of stuff really still kind of bothers me. And I think that's just my value system, still intact after all these years. But to me, I find that frustrating because I don't want people to be misled and then frustrated and disappointed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And because of the things they're putting in their body or I have with brain health, one of my friends her mother was taking a product for a period of time. And she goes, honestly, I don't notice any difference personally, but my husband does. And my husband told me this about me. And she got a whole different perspective from that because he was honest enough to say, what are you doing? Something's different. I noticed this about you. And she didn't pick it up at all. So it's really interesting that, like, I think products do have a place and people want immediate gratification. They're not always going to feel it. I'm taking vitamin D. Like I don't always feel it, but I need it. I know I need it, especially when I go in and test and know it's a low. So I do take that on an ongoing basis. But I think that's one of those silent ingredients that is good and is doing stuff for you, but you're never going to really see it until it's possibly too late. You're deficient for so long. Hopefully you're not doing that.
Well, what's funny is sometimes we don't notice our own health failing. And sometimes we don't realize that we're too busy or whatever. So about a month ago, where was I? Arizona. I think that's where I was. And I know it's crazy. But I was sitting down, I was doing some consultations, and some people knew I was coming to this specific store, and they had been listening to my radio show for like decades. The great-grandmother, the grandmother, the mom, and now the mom was in her 70s. So, I've been around a while. So she comes over and they introduced themselves. And they said, we moved here. We were in Las Vegas for a long time, and now we're listening to your podcast. I said, well, that's great. Thank you. And they said, my mom is very stressed. And she says, no, I'm not. And I said, you don't think you're stressed? And I said, the easiest way to find stress, to your point, is to ask people around you if you're stressed. So I looked at everybody and I said, is she stressed? And they're all like, oy. I mean, everybody was just, even the little grandchildren are like, and she went, really? And it was just kind of eye-opening for her. So we started focusing on that. So we worked some nutrition, made some dietary changes, and started adjusting with some natural herbs for calming and relaxing, and then focusing on her insomnia, which was a mess. And so I get a note from her about 3 days ago, and she said, hey, Jeff, how you doing? I wanted to thank you for our sit down. I am 10,000 times better than I was. She goes, and even my family will tell you that it's true. And I'm sleeping well. I don't feel short-tempered. I'm not losing my temper. I feel wonderful. I feel very positive. And she goes, just thank you. And I thought to myself, how many people out there, if they just took a moment to ask for a little guidance, could change their life dramatically? And how many people just say, that's the way it's supposed to be, or they just accept it? I'm not into accepting that kind of thing, because I think no matter where you are, you can always be a little bit better in one direction or another. What do you think?
I do. I think having an open mind is really important to come across from it. You have to see from the other person's point of view as well. Otherwise, you're just providing your point of view. You kind of see both sides. But I think that's important. As I've been in the industry a long time, people know it. my friends come up to me, my family comes up to me, and usually they have something very specific to ask me. It's not like, well, what do you think? It's, do I take this one or this one? And they gave me very, very specific things to look at. And I try to be very open-minded too, because a lot of these companies I know, and I can say, I usually can pick one or the other, but I give them the pros and cons of one, pros and cons of the other, and then go back to, what are you looking for? And let's make sure this is a right fit for you. To go back to what you said earlier, they need to make it part of their life, part of their lifestyle for change to take effect.
So let's move to the next one. Let's talk about food. What's
Sure.
going on in the food world today? I mean, it seems like with all we know about unhealthy food, we still embrace it, crave it, and want it because they've learned how to make terrible, disgusting, and yucky, no-value food taste good, and we crave it. And I'm just wondering, are we getting smarter with food or not?
Ooh, and we're social beings, so a lot of our social life runs around that too. Yes and no. I when I was in school studying to be a dietitian and foods, I also had a food science degree and learned about different foods and what you can do to make things taste better, be better, healthier. But do people actually use some of that or take it on a daily basis? And I've seen the industry change over time. There's a lot of focus now on getting functional ingredients into foods, lowering sugar, lowering salt. Those are always common denominators over the many, many years. But the functionality, I think, is really changed, that people are looking to add more benefits to a basic type of food. Or like our food pyramid is completely flipped, right? So everyone's getting new advice and new theories on why this is important and why we need less of certain things. And I've always gone back to the moderation. Like, what is that? Don't ever do anything one excess of the other for a long period of time too. Like that's always important. But I think moderation is really important in how we live our lives and what we're exposed to from environmental exposure or food exposure. And that's changed dramatically. We don't have as many nutrients in our foods and our soil than we had before. So fortification is becoming more important for different reasons.
What are your feelings of some of the functional foods, like maybe a lot of the like mushroom influence products that are out there now? And they're in everything from coffee to candy bars to snack mixes to protein powders. What do you think about functional mushrooms in our foods?
I was just talking to people about functional mushrooms. I think they're amazing. Mushrooms have so many different benefits depending on what the mushroom is or the strain or the extract. What I find so interesting is that you can get those from whole foods or from the supplements themselves, if they're prepared correctly. The coffee craze to me is very interesting. Not all mushrooms were meant to go into coffee or replace coffee, and not everyone has the palate, I think, for some of those too. So, but there's better formulations coming and going. Different mushrooms, of course, have different purposes, but the coffee craze is exploding. People are using for supplements for their pets. Functional use into different foods and beverages is really on the rise.
I think so too. And I didn't get much time to walk around at Expo this year because I was at the Kokora booth. But the little bit that I could see as I was walking around, there were a lot of functional foods that were there, and and even Kokora. I mean, they're putting them in their powders and their mixes and everything as well. And I just think that I've always been a mushroom person. And what's funny is 20 some years ago, I was doing radio shows on mushrooms and no one wanted to listen. It was like I was talking to an audience like I had two heads, and they were just looking at me like, what are you talking about? I mean, they knew mushrooms because they were at a salad bar or on their pizza. That was it. You start talking functional mushrooms back then. But about 8 or 9 years ago, it just started really growing. In the last 3 years, it has just exploded. And what's interesting to me is, once again, other parts of the world, they have been using functional mushrooms for decades and centuries. And
That's
here we are once again with all of our technology. We're the last one in line here in this country with the awareness of functional mushrooms, because I don't think they've even begun with their popularity.
Well, and how they're grown as well. I think that's fascinating, and how the quality, sustainability can really change from grower to grower. That definitely needs to be looked at And that's where traceability, transparency is very, very important, not only in the mushrooms you get in your grocery store, supermarket, but the ones that you're getting in your coffees or your supplements.
And I think that we're never really going to have a full grasp on things because we're all works in progress. And I think our industry is even a work in progress itself, but I think we're getting a little better. I mean, I really do want us to get to the level when people have a little bit more control over their health or realize that they have control over their health. Because I think that's one of the biggest things. Because, when somebody gets sick and they haven't been very aware, and then they're lucky to get through it, they seriously start to focus on their health and well-being, but sometimes it's very short period of time before they slide back. I have an example. I have a friend of mine, and their father was 4 kids, and their father was dying of lung cancer, brain cancer, and everything, and they're all smokers, all of them. And they all went up to see him, and they were all depressed, and they're all, about the smoking, and the doctor tell them how much damage they did, and then they took a break, and all 4 went out front and lit up a cigarette.
Oh, gosh.
And I was with them, and I'm just like, wow. And they were just like, they didn't even realize it. It's become such a part of them. Now, since then, all 4 of them have passed away from colon rectal cancer. The entire family, mom and dad, 4 kids, three grandchildren, all colon rectal cancer. And I've been reading the studies how it is linked many times to smoking and, of course, unhealthy lifestyle. But it's just amazing that the entire family. But it was so strong in the urge for the habit that it was almost impossible for them to quit. So change is not always easy. It's always worth it. But I think I say in the back of my mind that you have to be ready, I think, to your point, to make a change. You have to be part of the process.
I learned early on, do not tell someone about something they're not ready to hear. Being a young dietitian right out of school, your brain is full of all this information and you want to go cure and prevent and teach people. And if they're not ready to learn, it's you might as well just turn it off until they're ready.
Well, I used to have people that used to come in the stores early on for me as well, and they would say, I want to quit smoking. And I'm like, great. They go, do you have something to help you quit smoking? And I just got smart, and I would just say, are you ready to quit today? And they're like, well, no. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, come back and see me when you're ready. And I would leave it there because I know they're not ready. They're just kind of scoping it out. And I think you have to have the mindset. I think there's a lot more involved in that personal mindset than we actually think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think going back to the brain health conversation or longevity, it's not just one thing. It's the variety of things that we do, and it's keeping active, it's staying social, it's changing things up. Not always staying on the this is what I've always done type status. Just do something different. Teach your brain something new today. Teach your body something new. I think that mentality is really important. It keeps us changing, evolving, growing from a personal and, of course, physical standpoint as well.
Do you feel that the medical side and our side are getting closer?
Yes and no. I think each group is learning more and more about each other. But I'm also seeing a whole nother third category pop in that we've never seen before. Some are linked to the peptide conversation that you've heard. But a lot of new organizations and new companies are popping up to serve that middle of the road, not necessarily nutritional, not necessarily pharma, but a crossover. So we're seeing a whole new evolution of companies and products that we've never seen before come in to kind of gray that area, and can be confusing. Absolutely.
Now, I'm saving this question for you because I'd like your opinion on it. Semaglutides. What do you think?
I do think they have a place. It's interesting. We've been talking a lot about this in my group of women. There's some people are already trying them. Some people are curious to try some, but then they're held back because they don't know about the certain quality that's out there. If they go for a name brand, they know what they're getting. But if they don't use a name brand, then there's a little question about where's the source? Where is it coming from? Do I know they're doing it correctly? Is it going to make me sick for other reasons, not just for what that purpose is? So that's one thing with all of these new categories and with peptides. But I do think it serves a purpose and can get people on track quickly. fast. But they do need to learn some of those other lifestyle factors that are important for long-term change. Otherwise, they'll be right back where they were before they started.
I remember when Dr. Atkins came out with the Dr. Atkins diet and gave everybody, he basically told people, you can eat all the protein you want, eat until you're full. And then, of course, people were eating 10 times the amount because they could. And then they weren't losing any weight and they couldn't figure out why. And I remember seeing him on a show and he was like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Because remember, even though it's protein, it's still calories. So you're still putting a ton of calories in. And when people started moderating and bringing in, taking a B vitamin, taking a multiple vitamin, having enough greens in there as well, everything started to fall in place. I think it's the same thing with the semi-glutides. People somehow get this impression that if I take this shot, or now the oral as well, I can eat as much as I want because this is going to protect me. And then they don't lose any weight because they want their cake and eat it too, literally. So, I agree with you. I think it has its place. I think it's a great tool. I think it makes available the chance for people to see some results. But I feel the same way about that I do with gastric bypass. I mean, I think that there are people out there where gastric bypass for them individually, their size and the situation, it was a life-saving event for them. And they had to go for like a year of psychotherapy. They had to talk to their psychiatrist and they had to be cleared to be able to have the surgery. Now today, people just wake up and say, I'm getting a gastric bypass tomorrow, and if their insurance won't pay for it, they'll pay for it. So it's a lot easier today. Are they ready? Most likely not. Are they ready for the changes that comes along with it? No. That once again, it's the quick fix, and I don't know how to get us out of that. I wish there was a pill to stop the quick fix. That would be great.
That's true. And we're learning so much more of what these peptides do, not only with that, with weight suppression or different losses, but even brain health. I've seen some of that pop up. So it's so new and it's changing rapidly. I think just trying to keep up with it is difficult at times.
Well, I think that people are getting a little better, like I say, and I mention this a lot because I want people to be, get the credit they deserve for trying to get healthy. I just wish there were more of us really on that journey and on the journey before it became an emergency rather than just a really good choice. So I think I loved having you here today. I think you're wonderful. I think you have definitely blazed the trail in our industry, and you're part of that wonderful group that is out there that is making a huge difference. And thank you for what you're doing on every level. Got a quick question for you. I'd love to end with a question. If you were personally to leave the earth today, what would you want to be remembered for?
I think for me, long lasting, I want to help people find their voice. I want people to be able to think their voice is important enough to speak and get their opinion out there, whatever it might be, taking care of their health, vocalizing something in a meeting. People need to find their voice and they need to be verbal to make a statement about that. So I would love to be, and as someone who helps people refine or at least bubble that to the top so they're able to do that.
I love that. That's beautiful. Will you come back and see me again?
I would love to, Jeffrey. Absolutely.
I would love it. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did today. I think that we're all learning that there are amazing voices in this industry. And I am definitely trying. I'm on my second journey. The radio show was 40 some years. And now with the podcast, my whole job is to bring you guests, bring you input, bring you insight, and bring you answers to questions that you may not even know you're thinking about. Karen Todd, my guest today. I hope you enjoyed this. Remember, go to any platform. You can hear all of my podcasts. If you do go to my YouTube channel where you can watch us and watch the interview, watch the interaction, make sure to subscribe. Subscribing takes a second. Click a button. What it does is allows us to get more plays and more visibility for my absolutely incredible guest. Karen, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Burke.
You guys have a wonderful day. Take care of yourself and be well, and God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.